out there, everybody. And thanks so much for joining us here today on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale. And joining me, as always, the man at the helm of the ship, my little pickle slice of heaven, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm here. Yep, I'm here. It's getting windy out. I think it's about to storm, so we got to hurry up and get this show done.
Dude, we got like a crazy, just a little front blowing through, right? What happened? It's like 100 degrees outside, and now it's going to rain.
Man, we need the rain, so
Bad.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't want the thunderstorms or the tornadoes or hail or all that, but man, just a good gentle rain.
You're down
3 or
with
4
that?
days. I'm down with that. We need it bad.
Sit around, curl up.
There's fires been going on everywhere, wildfires and stuff. We don't need none of that.
We're out on that.
You know, and like literally all of April, we got nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Have you been out to the lake? It's bad.
It's going to get really bad.
Yeah.
It's going to get really bad. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing, working, taking care of Pop-Pop. My mom went to Mexico for a week, and so I had to take care of my dad. Me and my brother, we split the duty. But, man, it's a chore, I'm telling you.
Hanging out with the pops.
Hanging out with him, but he went through a lot of cigars.
Oh, don't say that. What if your mom's
She
listening?
knows. I already told her. And I was like, listen, she's kind of cool with it now. I think she's finally realized, like, look, man, he's only got a couple years left. Like, let him enjoy himself. Are you worried about him getting cancer now?
Yeah, right.
He's lucky to have lived this long.
He's got half of a half. He's got a quarter.
So he's doing good. What did we watch? Of course, you know.
Did you show him? We got to tell everybody because you had posted it. I shared it on my story of the new Predator series coming out on Hulu called Prey. Did you show him?
I showed it to him, of course.
And?
Yeah, he's super excited.
Nice.
Luke is super excited. Listen, I have no idea if the show Prey is going to be any good, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it will be because I love the Predator franchise. In my mind, I've always thought about,
here we go,
if I had the ability to create a television series or show like that with the Predator, I wish they would show the Predator throughout time going to different places. Like season 1, he's in like feudal Japan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's fighting with samurais and stuff like that. And then season 2, he's somewhere completely different. Like he's fighting the Aztecs and all this stuff in South America. And then next season, he's fighting Zulu tribesmen in Africa. And then
Roman soldiers,
Vikings in Germania and stuff like that. I think that would be really cool to watch the Predator in different eras and different times fighting.
Yeah.
Because from what it looks like in the clips, it looks like it's like taking place in North America against Native Americans.
Yes.
So that would be really cool because, you know, it only shows the girl with her bow.
Yeah.
And then the laser.
When that laser comes on, you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
You might want to put that down.
Yeah. I love it. I hope it's going to be really good.
I do, too. And like you and I had talked, as much as we love Predator, it seems like they had strayed a little bit from like the original vision.
With the newest movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, the newest movie, like I said, the special effects and all that stuff were fun.
When was that out? Like 10 years ago?
No. No, it was like 3 years ago.
Was it?
Yeah, because Luke was mad because he couldn't watch it because it had a lot of cursing.
Oh, that's right.
It was a pretty good movie, but the thing that I didn't like is they tried to cheese it up. They made a whole bunch of funny stuff that just, it's not supposed to be a comedy, right? Like if you watch the first one, it's not a comedy at all. At all.
Yeah. Why do they do that, right?
I don't know.
Let's just stick to what we know. Let's just stick to it being crazy.
Because, you know, they had the wacky guys on that, like, prison bus.
Yeah.
And then they go to and stay at the soldier's wife's house and stuff. But the whole time they're cutting up and, you know, it's not necessary to the story. The story was like the female scientist got called into the secret lab where they had a predator sedated.
Cliff notes, folks.
She was like one of the best, right, of all, you know, in this field of studying alien technology. And she's, wow, you guys actually have it. The thing gets loose.
Of course.
Runs around, right? And then a giant predator comes and kills that predator. But that's basically the movie. But then, you know, they throw in all the other stuff.
Then there's some stuff in between, right?
But I'm still a big fan, though, because I like the Predator.
Always.
Very cool.
What was you going to say?
I was going to say, I can't think of the name of what they really call them. Something like a K or Y, like not Yuan T.
I know, but I know exactly
like
what
Yunta or something like that. Something like that. I always think of Yuan T, but that's not what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Luke he has about 6 different ones now.
And they're big ones, right?
Yeah, they're like 9 inches tall, different predators.
I'm going to have to get one of those. I saw them and I almost bought one.
You can get them at Target.
I know, and I just didn't because I want to put one up here in the studio.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we need to get a xenomorph head.
There you go, from Alien.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Very cool. What have you been up to?
Man, oh man, just living my best life. Folks, if y'all want to hear me chit-chatting on another podcast, you can jump over to my buddy Adam's podcast, Off Grid, and you'll be able to listen to me. He ended up allowing me to come on, and we chit-chatted, and he and his son had a very, very interesting encounter with something that is primate-like up in the mountains. So if you want to listen, he shares with me on that. So if you want to go check it out, the Off Grid Podcast, and you'll see me, it's me, and it's got me with my pig picture on there and all that. So y'all can go tune in and check it out. But it's really interesting. I may have to have him come on and tell it a little bit on this one, because it's pretty cool, because you're talking about dealing with someone who has grown up and spent his whole life hunting and up in the mountains and doing all this, and then had something that knows for a fact whatever makes that sound does not live in native that you would think, or is not something you have heard routinely.
Right, and like we mentioned all the time on the show, like when you get credible witnesses, people that are experts in a certain field, for me it holds more validity to the story, because it's like you were saying, this is a lifelong outdoorsman.
But when you're natives of that area, that's what we've always laughed about. Why did nobody want to listen to the natives? You know, like you talked about Mokele and Bembe, where we'd brought up, where they said it was real and people still want to laugh it off and be like, no, it's not real. They're telling all. I'm like, you need to listen to the natives, because the people that live in that area generally know what other things live in that area with them.
Yeah. But,
especially those that spend time in the woods.
You know, we get emails all the time from all over, people talking about coyotes, coyote this, coyote that. I'm telling you, man, coyotes are not a problem. Like, I'm never scared of coyotes. I see them almost every time I go hunting.
I know they get after people's pets and they get brazen when they come into town.
Chickens, but the pets, the crazy ones that have rabies, yeah, they'll get in your yard, but do what they do out here, and all the ranchers do. You shoot them, and you hang them on fences.
The biggest problem I've had with coyotes is not enough ammunition. So I've got to share something with you right now. This is going to be an array of crazy stories that we've either been sent or we have just received. It's crazy, and it's gotten carried away. Over the last 30 or 45 days, the floodgates have opened. And we have really received some wild stuff. And it goes on, too, after just doing the one with the Mothman. We've had more crazy stuff going up in Indiana and Illinois. It is popping off. But I wanted to share this with you, this crazy account. I think you're going to enjoy it. Again, this is how it goes down, right? It's always the headlines, always the headlines. And I think Lon, whenever he's sending us stuff and we're talking, he knows this. He likes to just sneak some in because he's like, this is going to fire me up. It does. It says sharp-toothed troll encountered in rural Oregon. It says about 20 or so years ago, I was driving down a pass in Oregon. Now, it's just outside my town in the foothills and has farms all around. Most of the night traffic is delivery trucks avoiding the toll roads. Now, there's a little field off the road I discovered. Since it's outside of town, it's the perfect place for stargazing. And the grass in the summer covers you. I'd bring friends up there to look at the stars and talk about deep subjects. When this incident took place, I was bringing a new friend to my field. He was the ultimate skeptic. Didn't believe in anything unless it could be demonstrated scientifically. End of story. Well, I'm a bit more flexible, so discussions with him were quite engaging and enjoyable. It was late at night on the road, and it was curvy, so just before reaching my field, we came around a bend, and something darted out in front of my car. It was about the size of a chimpanzee, and it was running using its front arms as a chimpanzee would. When it ran in front of my car, it reared up, and I saw a grimacing mouth full of sharp teeth. Now, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that this was a chimp. I live near a primate testing facility, and there have been 2 escapes in my lifetime. But this was just wrong. What truly broke me was that this creature was wearing a backpack and a hat.
Okay.
A red hat.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a chimpanzee.
A pointy red hat. My mind froze on that hat, and then it short-circuited. I drove into the bushes on the other side of the road, heading in the direction of my house, slammed my brakes, and put the car in reverse. Before I could back up, my stoic, scientific, calm friend screamed at me, "What are you doing?" To which I replied, "I'm going after it." He locked his door, leaned over, and locked mine and told me to drive. Still considering him, I asked what he thought he had just seen. "I don't know. A gnome or troll, something. Just go." I was satisfied enough that my friend had seen something that shocked him to his core enough to shake his beliefs, and we drove on, and we never spoke of it again. I thought of it at the time as a kobold, as it resembled the description of kobolds in the Magic Kingdom books, but it wasn't a kobold. It wasn't until many, many years later that I came across a description of a Southeast Asian mythological creature. I've forgotten the name of it, so if anyone has knowledge, I'd appreciate it, which matched it exactly. The funny thing is, we have a heavy Asian population in that area, so it oddly makes sense. I haven't seen anything like this since, though I look every time I drive by that spot. Jay.
Wow.
So a troll. And I love how they discuss, he brings up the hat.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I noticed is, why has it got a backpack and why is it wearing a hat? Now, again, it's something that I never thought about, is other cultures bringing in their fae.
Yeah.
Like something attaching itself to these other cultures and bringing
That's a good point. Also, I'd like to point out that a kobold, I mean, those things have pack tactics, and I think they're immune to fire.
Here we go.
So you got to be careful with that.
This is 5e.
In case if you want to have a flamethrower, you might want to rethink.
Right.
Don't
cast fireball.
Very scary. Check this out. It says, "Hey guys, my name is Stephen Peebles. I wrote in a few months ago with a story about something chasing my younger brother and I out of the woods while screaming and cackling at us. And I mentioned that my wife, our 1-year-old son, and myself were moving from Washington State to get my wife back home to East Texas, where we both enjoy and want to raise our kids. I just listened to the most recent episode where a travel nurse wrote in about living in Jacksonville and was coming to Gladewater and experienced 2 dogmen. Now, this experience doesn't have to do with Dogman, but I just went down for an inspection on our new house, which is located only about 3 miles outside of Jacksonville to the east, and the renter was still there trying to move out. During the inspection, he pulled me aside and told me something about the south end of the house, and specifically the room we were standing in. That gave me chills. He was a quiet and polite guy, but he seemed to have a fascination with the dark and creepy of things. He had skulls that I'm assuming and hoping were fake, and figurines of creepy monsters, ghosts, and demons that were all decorated across the shelving and the walls near the ceiling all the way around the room. I thought it was pretty cool because of my interest in the weird and the unexplainable. He asked me if I believed in the supernatural or ghosts or anything, to which my excitement raised because I'm always down for a cool story or an experience to be shared with me, so I said, yes, absolutely I am. He proceeded to tell me that one night he felt compelled, for some reason, to draw one demon out of a group of 7 or 11. I can't quite remember. But he showed me this creepy drawing that he had previously hung up, but told me he took it down shortly after and threw it in the back of the closet because weird stuff was starting to happen. He said in a concerned voice, "I'm sorry, but there's no way I'm taking that with me. It's going to stay in the back of the closet." So I'll be burning that immediately when I get down there in a couple weeks. What I'm about to relay will explain why. The things he said were happening was that it used to have this room back there set up for gaming, a gaming room and drawing and figurine painting station. The house is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house with the master bedroom on the opposite end of the house than the other 4 bedrooms. The hallway is about 30 feet long, straight back from the living room, and then it takes a 90-degree turn to the right and continues down another 15 feet, give or take. This room he had set up was at the very far back corner of the left side of the hallway. One night, his girlfriend had walked into the room where he drew and hung up this picture of the demon. And in the back corner, there was an 8 to 9 foot tall cloaked black figure that looked similar to what he drew, just standing there kind of hunched forward because its head was touching the ceiling. He slowly turned around to look after he saw his girlfriend's reaction, and there it was, still standing there. It just stayed there for a few more seconds and then disappeared. A few days later, his girlfriend had picked up some sage to try to cleanse the room. She went into the back room, back to the corner where this thing was standing, and went to light the sage. It wouldn't ignite. So she stepped out into the hall and went to light it again, and it lit right up. With the sage now burning, she walked back to that corner of the room, and the smoke started pushing back away from the corner, like someone had turned on a fan, and the sage then extinguished. He said they tried it a few more times and never succeeded in keeping it lit once they got into the corner of that room. He then said it was really pissed. He understandably moved out all of his stuff in another bedroom across the hall to try to escape it, but would still hear it move and break stuff in that room. It would slam on the walls. He could hear strange walking in the hallway outside of the rooms whenever he was home alone, only to open the door and have no one in the house at all. And that brings us to now. It hasn't been dealt with and was still happening up to him moving out. He also expressed a different feeling entity that he explained as an older woman that hangs out in part of the hallway and one of the other bedrooms and bathroom that connects two bedrooms. He said it feels like eyes burning through when you shower in there or spend time in the bedroom, but she doesn't do anything besides walk around and make little noises. Nothing aggressive, but still creepy as hell. And this is in the bedroom I was going to make my son's room. So I'll be needing to figure out how to get rid of this stuff because, to put it lightly, I don't need my son to hear his dad scream like a little girl, and I sure as hell don't want anything messing with my son. Just thought I'd share some more East Texas creepiness with you, and I'll write in if I have another encounter or anything when I get there. Fingers crossed that we won't. In the meantime, I'll have the brisket on the smoker for the bruds anytime you want. Peace.
Word.
Crazy, man. You hear these stories all the time of people messing with demons and, spirit boards and things like that, and you can actually manifest them. I don't know because I don't deal with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not messing with that.
I don't even want to, right? It doesn't sound... There's what could possibly benefit you in bringing out a demon into your room? What do you think? You're going to play... You're going to play card games with it? You're going to play Connect 4 with your friend demon? I mean, what? Why?
I feel like it's something that they do just to see if it's true. Can you do it?
Right,
Let's just assume you can and just not do it.
Right. That's exactly right. I don't know why people have this fascination where they feel like they need to try to manifest something evil.
Because we're crazy. People are insane.
Yeah, some more than others.
You know what's funny is I remember hearing stories over the years back in days of talking to guys that do remodels about finding really weird stuff either in the walls or you take down paneling or whatever was on or whatever's over sheetrock, you pull it off and there's something, or you peel the sheetrock off and there might have been something behind it and there's crazy stuff painted on those walls and all that had been covered up. I remember hearing all that stuff. So I've always wondered how many of those things are in older homes. Just because you purchased an older home from someone who, let's say, retired and then passed away there and all that, doesn't mean that someone wasn't like Aleister Crowley. Doesn't mean that in one of those spare bedrooms or in a basement that there wasn't some crazy shenanigans going on, right? You don't know. And that could be exactly what led to it. Maybe there was something that somebody had opened up or left there half undone in these houses. I've always wondered if that's one of those things because you never know. If you can't explain how it got there, right? Something's attached itself. Did you bring it in? You can't explain all these things. Well, maybe it was there before. Maybe it got put in there accidentally, or that's just where it got left. Folks, if you like creepiness and craziness, Kyle and I have got another pile of them coming up for you after the break. Let's take a quick one. We're going to jump into it. I've got some unnerving stuff I want to share. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. We're back, and I have a creepy story for you, my brud.
Well, that's what I'm here for, man. That's what I'm here for.
Right? So Kyle and I have always laughed. I love camouflage. So does Kyle. We love all kinds of camo. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things. Ever since woodland camo as a kid, we had everything, right? Tiger stripes. You go all the way up into Sitka gear now. You just can't stop. I just love camouflage. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I have hunted the majority of bow hunts here recently, especially in flannel shirts, right? It's always been the joke, right? Fred Bear. If you go all the way back to Fred Bear, look at Papa Fred, you see him in flannel.
If Fred Bear did it, if Ben Pearson did it,
Howard Hill,
if Chuck Adams anybody else did it. Bob Folkrod, Dan Fitzgerald. If all these guys did it, why not good enough for
Art
you?
Young and Dr. Saxton Pope.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the guys that worked with Ishii. These are the men that started the Pope and Young Club that really got it going. Yeah. So the camouflage thing is the deal that, and it may be what it is now, but the flannel has always stuck out to me, right? That's always like when you think of bow hunting or hunting in general, but I always think of it as bow hunting. When I think of bow hunters back in the day, I think of kahake pants and flannel shirts, right?
What kind of pants?
Kahakes.
I think of like loggers. I think of the guy on the brawny paper towel. He's got a flannel on.
Yeah.
I think of...
was it Paul Bunyan?
Yeah.
An old blue Paul Bunyan wore flannel, doesn't he?
I like flannel.
Dude, I'm a big fan of flannel, but you may not be after this.
Okay. Tell me why.
Says I have a story that still to this day gives me the creeps just thinking about it. I was bow hunting with my dad on my uncle's places here in central Mississippi about 30 years ago. I was in a stand on the north end while Dad was in back of the woods 400 or 500 yards away. It was a cold, rainy day with the highs barely above 35. I was in the stand for about an hour when I got that gloom and doom feeling. Not so much that watching me deal, just a real bad feeling. So I kept watching the field wondering if Dad was okay. I started scanning the woods behind me just to help get rid of that feeling, and that's when I saw him. No, not Dad, but another man, and he was about 50 yards away through some brush, but it was clearly a man standing there. No movement, just staring. And my first thought was, well, someone else snuck in here hunting. But we didn't see any trucks parked anywhere along the gravel road, and it was a good 5 miles to any house. So he seemed to be staring right at me, which was a little unnerving. So I waved at him to go. But I got no response. So I looked out into the field to see if maybe he was looking out there instead of at me. No deer or anything else out there. I looked back to the spot where the man was, and he was gone. So I scanned around and saw him much closer, but behind me, standing in the open between two cedars. He was close enough he had to look up to see me, or to see where he was too. Now get a load of this. He looked to be about 60-ish, with a short gray-black beard. He had a long-sleeve blue flannel shirt and faded pants. No coat, no gloves. He continued staring. I waved once more just to get a reaction, but nothing. At that point, my bad feeling went straight to a time to flight or fight for my life. I picked my bow up off the hook and slid my seat so he could see me prepare to draw if I needed. I heard a vehicle on the gravel road but didn't look away. He didn't look away either. Just then he made 2 steps and was gone behind the cedars. I looked up the road and saw it was the neighbor feeding his cows a big bale of hay, so I continued to scan the woods and nothing. Now the fight feeling was gone and back to the doom and gloom. I thought about climbing down, but I knew he was around somewhere. Plus, I didn't want to have to explain to my dad that I was scared of a creepy old man and spooked the deer, which were due to come out. Well, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be walking out after dark. So I watched the woods, and I could care less if a buck came out. 30 minutes later, I saw movement out in the field, and I saw it was my dad. He was slowly walking back to the truck, stopping and looking behind him ever so often. And he still had an arrow nocked, which was rare. He got about halfway back to the truck, and he motioned towards me to head to the truck. So I shimmied down the tree and made a beeline to the pickup. I too watched behind me as I left. Well, when I got to the truck, he was visibly shaken. Dad kept a bottle of whiskey under the seat and took a good long pull. I asked him if he was okay, and he just gave me this look. I asked him if he had seen the man too. He looked up and nodded, yeah. I told him what had happened to me, and he just nodded. He didn't go into great detail, but the man had paid him a visit, but this time much closer. We never went back there to bow hunt again. Dad wouldn't even talk about it later. I went with some friends there about 5 years later to do some quail hunting. We walked the fence rows, but when we got near that old stand area, I had that same feeling again and suggested we go to another place. Who was that old man? Was he a hobo or a homeless guy, a poacher? Or was he a ghost? I don't know, but he wasn't and didn't act normal at all. He didn't blink, and he should have been shivering in the cold with just that shirt on. My dad grew up on that place, hunting and fishing and camping and trapping all over it, and never once had anything like that happen before or after. Thanks, CR.
Wow.
Is that not creepy?
Very.
A flannel man. Now, that's not the only tale. There are a lot of stories of these flannel shirt men.
Really?
Yeah, it's these odd sightings, these odd seeings. And again, it makes you wonder, is it a ghost? Is it something that's attached to itself? Is it something evil and that's the way it comes out? It doesn't feel that way to me. And the reason I say it is, what's the point? Why would you show up as a creepy old man in gray flannel when you could just be something in the shadows hidden?
Right.
Unless you're toying with people. But then again, what's the point of evil taking its resemblance of an old man in a flannel shirt? And if so, why is there more sightings? It would be one if it was one thing.
Right.
And you like recognized it, that's not it. There are a lot of these stories where people see these flannel men.
That is crazy.
It doesn't make sense. And again, I've often wondered, like we've spoke with the Black Eyed Kids, is this a Fae generation? Is this something that the Fae designs itself to? Like we've talked about with the Black Eyed Kids, they could be Fae. That's just how they resemble themselves now. You know, whereas maybe they used to come as something when a cloaked evil demon, whatever. Now they come as Black Eyed Kids, or
right.
Now I don't know what it is, but this sighting, it really truly makes no sense into what it could possibly be. And like he's talking about, the idea of sneaking around on somebody's deer lease during deer season, trying to, in air quotes, intimidate or scare them, is a really piss poor idea.
Yes, that's a dangerous activity you don't want to do.
It doesn't matter if it's firearm or archery. You don't want to get shot with either.
Well, remember the guy a couple years ago that dressed up like a Sasquatch to try to scare those girls, and they ran him over with the car.
Yeah.
And he died.
Yeah. Yeah. So that you don't want to be monkeying around in anybody's property trying to scare them during hunting season.
You know, I was just telling my brother, one of my boys, this story. Me and my brother pulled a prank on my father long ago, and looking back at it now, it's really dumb. We easily could have been killed. So we were all hunting on this particular piece of land here, North Texas, and each of us had our own stand, so we know where we were. This was long before cell phones. So what you would do is you'd say, okay, well, I'll meet you here 30 minutes after dark, or, same thing. When you go in the morning.
It's always 30 minutes after dark, or it's going to be, I'll meet you here at 10.
Yeah, I'll be here by 9:30, 10 in the morning. And then, of course, if you hear a gun go off or something like that, then you can leave early because they might need help tracking or whatever. But so we were all in our spots. So we knew which way my dad would be coming. So I had left my stand.
Is this in the evening hunt?
This is in the evening.
Dude, you're lucky you're here.
I could see my brother's headlamp coming down the trail, so I knew he was done, right? So we meet up. Did you see anything? Just the normal stuff. Nah, I didn't see anything. I saw a little one and saw a bobcat, but, nothing. Just chit-chat. So we know my dad's coming, and he's like, you know what? You want to scare Dad? Yeah, let's scare him.
God, he hates you.
So we creeped down this fence line and waited, and we could hear him coming. Well, right when he came, within like 6 feet of us, we jumped out. Wah! Boy, he jerked that gun off his shoulder and, pointed it at us. And
so what you're saying is there was no flight. It was all fight.
Yeah, but literally, I was this close to getting shot. He could have easily shot us.
Yeah, he could have.
And then, of course, he yelled at us.
Like, what are you doing? He dress yelled down after that.
Yeah, he was mad. Don't ever do that again. And, as kids, we're like, oh, come on. It was funny. It was a joke. But now, as an adult, I'm like, dude, that was pretty serious. Like, I'm not so sure if my kids did that to me that I wouldn't have accidentally pulled the trigger.
You'll be amped up, right? You would be amped up. What's funny is there's no running. He was like, oh, we're fighting.
Crazy. Speaking of hunting, check this out. This is a pretty cool story. It says, hello, gents. Recently discovered your podcast a few months back. I thoroughly enjoy catching up on the episodes while driving to work in the mornings. My story pertains to an extreme sense of dread, like being watched while hunting, way north in the woods of Minnesota. Now, I'll start off saying that I consider myself an experienced hunter, an outdoorsman, not one to shy away from setting out on a 2 to 3 day backcountry bow hunt in the late fall in search of elusive whitetail. I also spent a decade in the Army as a cavalry scout, with a 16-month deployment to Iraq with over 400 combat patrols.
You're fine in the woods.
So I would like to say I'm not one to scare easy. But what happened on this one beautiful October day makes me rescind that claim.
Uh-oh.
On this day, I was upland bird hunting, ruffed grouse and woodcock, with my bird dog, Hank. We were walking old logging roads not far from the town of Squaw Lake, Minnesota. It was the perfect autumn day for us. Nice, cool breeze, sun was shining, We had 3 birds in the bag so far, and we were looking for 3 more to limit out. Hank had just flushed a grouse, but I was too slow and I wasn't able to get off a shot. So I sent the dog into the brush, and I followed behind. We flushed the bird again, and then once more, 100 or so yards into the brush. Not one to give up, we kept pushing after this bird until we reached a natural clearing. Thinking the bird probably sailed across the clearing and landed near a dense stand of poplar trees, we headed that way, Hank leading the way, nose to the ground, working side to side trying to pick up a scent. As I hit the center of the clearing, my spidey senses went on high alert. I stopped in my tracks. Hair on my neck stood up, ice in my veins. I had the overwhelming sensation to jump back and run as fast as I could. Seconds later, Hank, who was about 15 yards from the tree line, stopped. Ears were alert, looking forward. Slowly, his wagging tail went down between his legs, and his ears sunk back. Now, I've never witnessed my dog do what happened next. No, he didn't turn around and come back. He walked backwards to me, not wanting to avert his vision from the brush. His gaze was on the tree line, not one particular spot, but the entire tree line. He was scanning for something which both of us had picked up on subconsciously. It was at this moment that I realized there was no longer any breeze on the leaves or any sound of nature at all. It was completely silent, and worse, it was completely still. Hank reached my side. He was leaning into me at this point. I had already raised my over-under 12 gauge to a more ready position at this point. The fear I was feeling was unimaginable. Every cell in my body was telling me to run, but my mind did not want me to take my vision away from whatever the silent threat was. Finally, after what felt like 5 minutes in my mind, we started slowly walking backwards the way we came, only briefly looking back to ensure my footing. Both of us keeping our eyes toward that tree line, I painstakingly crept backwards to the logging road. We picked up our pace, frequently checking our egress route as we headed the half mile to my pickup. Around 100 yards from the clearing, the sounds of nature and the wind through the leaves returned. I started to feel more at ease. We finally reached my truck, and I decided there was enough for the day, and we went home with half a limit of grouse. For the next week at work, this incident was on my mind, and it kept bothering me. I'm a very analytical type of person, so I wanted to find out what in the hell that was out there. So I decided to apply the scientific method. The next weekend, I called up my buddy, who likes to hunt as well. So not telling him anything of what I experienced, I asked if he wanted to go out for a trail ride and do a little grouse hunting. He had no plan, so we set out the next afternoon. Now, I researched this area on my phone and even marked that clearing on my OnX app. This time, I had us approach the clearing from the north off of a different logging road. I actually brought my Magnum revolver with me as well, just in case. I left my dog at home this time, so as to not to have any influence on the situation. Sure enough, we get about 100 yards from this clearing and my buddy chimes in, "Hey man, something doesn't feel right." By this time, I had already had some anxiety running through me as we got closer to the clearing. We stopped where we were. I asked him, "What's up?" He stated, "I don't know, man. Something's just telling me that we should turn around." We were higher in elevation by approaching this clearing this way, and a lot more of the leaves had fallen in the last week. I gazed towards where the clearing was, but wouldn't you know it, there was about 60 yards in front of us. There was a good-sized mound. This area is located in the Chippewa National Forest, which is part of the Leech Lake Reservation. Now, I think it's safe to say that this is an Indian burial mound. We slowly left the area and returned to my pickup, and I told him about my experience the week prior. He was a little mad at me, stating, what if I was leading him into some den of an apex predator or something? I calmed him down by churching him up about how good of a shot he was, and he chuckled a bit. Anyways, that's my story of how the spirit of an old Native American must have been staring at me through the trees for intruding on his final resting place. I love the show, guys. Keep up the good work. And I like your guys' analytical approach to some topics of how it may not always be supernatural, but when it is, then that's when it's creepy. Peace, y'all. Nope, my Yankee tongue doesn't like saying that. Bye now. Watch out for deer. That's much better. Wow, cool story.
That is awesome.
You know, when he was telling the story, well, I was telling the story, when I was reading his story, it reminded me we did an episode called The Clearing.
Yep.
Or The Circle in the Woods or something, where it was something very similar to that.
A perfect circle or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, possibly. We've done so many. But it was similar type of story where guys were out hunting and they came upon this clearing and it just didn't feel right.
I tell you what I would do if it were me. I would look into... and you might even talk to some of the Native Americans in that area. If you could just offer them something, bring something to that mound, whether it be tobacco, whether it be
That's a good idea.
whatever that they use for barter or whatever that the natives say that they would appreciate, because we don't know the age of whatever's in that area. And if it is a burial mound and there is, a good possibility of something there, the reason that it may be leaning in against you that way is because you are encroaching in its hunting grounds.
Yeah, good possibility.
Now, it may not really be hunting now, but it may have the memory of that area. Whereas if you bring in offerings, you're like, I'm asking for permission. I'm going in. Maybe that will take it away. And it may be some of the best hunting in that area. Hence the reason you get those feelings when you get close is maybe they don't want you there real close.
Well, it definitely wouldn't hurt to try that approach.
No, being kind never hurts.
Maybe I should try that this deer season. Instead of practicing so much, I should just start praying to the elders that once roamed this land to help me with a hunt.
Well, I've seen you shoot, and you need to pray a lot harder.
That's right.
You better just stick to practicing. Leave the praying up to people that can pray. You just do what you're good at.
That's right.
I've got this creepiness here. A while back, I had discussed a thing, and I'm still eat up with the idea of pale crawlers, right? Because again, I feel like those, look, you're not seeing them necessarily in the woods all the time. People see them in town. They see all this. As far as we know, pale crawlers can't fly, right? So they walk.
I hope not.
So where the heck do they go? Like if they're in town, do they vanish? Are they multidimensional? They hide in the dumpster? Like where do these things go? And then I come across this. This is one of those things. Like you can understand it if it's in the woods, right? You could get it like, oh, pale crawlers in the woods. I get it. Listen to this. This took place back in August of 2016. It says a close friend of mine had bought around 15 acres of wooded area there in central Maine and then invited me out to live on it. Now, the reason I was invited to live on it is because they were turning this into a cannabis grow up there in Maine and wanted for me to help them out there. So I lived there all summer, and my bedroom was an old school bus that I converted into a nice little house. We had 7 people total on the land, and everyone was hanging out in the community house, a double-wide trailer. That night, they were watching movies and playing board games, and it was about 9 p.m. Now, I was tired from work, so I said goodnight and began walking to the bus. And it was very dark as the moon was not up yet. I was barefoot with no flashlight, but it wasn't a far walk, and I knew I could navigate with my feet. As I passed by the weed garden, I heard a noise of crunching. Now, the driveway was clear of leaves and brush, so the rustling was definitely the sound of something stepping out from the woods and directly into my path. And for half a second, I thought it was an animal. But my stomach formed a knot when I realized that the steps sounded distinctly bipedal. My eyes had been looking at my feet, but they shot upwards when I heard the noise. And before me stood the creature. I don't remember seeing its legs, probably because my eyes shot up so fast and I was so stunned. It stood maybe 7 feet tall. And when my eyes shot up, I was facing its chest, and I had to raise my eyes higher just to see its face. And when I saw the face, I had the wind knocked completely out of me. This creature was whitish, not glowing, but its skin looked exactly like pale skin under the moonlight. Now remember, the moon had not risen yet. Now the form was humanoid, but very tall and skinny. It had no clothing. I saw a bare chest, slender arms, and the shape of a head. I don't remember ears. I remember holding its gaze for a moment, searching for eyes and seeing nothing. No distinguished eyes, face, or mouth, but the face definitely had ridges and contour. I think maybe it did have facial features, but they were so subtle or sunken in that I couldn't make them out. Anyway, the sight of its face knocked the wind out of me. My eyes fell to the ground. They felt forced to the ground. I couldn't bear to look at this thing. And there it stood, perfectly still, while I gasped for air for a moment. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find the wind. I felt so paralyzed by fear. I took a moment to do a deep inhale, then a deep exhale. I looked at its face again. It still stood there, motionless, watching me. I then turned on my heels and ran back to the community house as fast as I could, screaming the entire way. My friends suggested that perhaps I had come face to face with a person who was scoping out the weed garden to steal from it. This is common here, and the garden was flowering, so it was really smelly, and locals had definitely noticed. The part I can't answer, though, is why would a robber walk right up to me? I don't know. See, I consider myself a skeptic, and I think it's possible that my mind was playing tricks on me. But then again, I've never been afraid of the dark or anything like that. I told my friend this story, and he said I should share it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. This was probably the strangest experience of my entire life, and to be honest, it still haunts me. These days, I'm now afraid of the dark. I'm still not sure if I think it's extraterrestrial or just a terrestrial creature. Is it human? I don't know. It sure didn't feel human, although the build of the body was undeniably human-like. It was the eyes that made it seem inhuman. I shudder to think of the phrase, eyes are the window of the soul, because when I looked into its eyes, I saw nothing there, just emptiness. There was no feeling of human connection in that gaze. I don't recall any smell, and I wouldn't call it an attack, but I was definitely scared. I felt intense dread from the moment I realized the crunching sound was human, like 2 feet stepping, rather than the 4-footed gait of an animal. Thanks, T.
Wow.
So you've walked up on a pale crawler in a pot farm.
Yeah, that's what it said.
So look, Samson gets you lifted, right? Maybe the crawler's just trying to get lifted.
Maybe.
What could it be, though? What can you mistake for that? We always ask, what can you mistake? What can you mistake for a... Now, mind you, they said this thing was glowing.
Yeah, glowing.
But it wasn't glowing. It just had that pale... like salamander or catfish belly, right? Like that kind of skin.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And it's just got this some sort of funky iridescence, but they said it's not glowing. So it's just that pale. What do you mistaken for that?
Man, I don't know.
There's nothing you mistake for that.
Is it something extraterrestrial? Is it something from a parallel universe? Is it like earlier we talked about someone summoned a demon? I don't know. Is it even really there? Are you imagining it? Is it a hallucination? You know what I'm saying?
Because if you break it down, there's no reason for the Fae to be involved in pot. They can come and go whenever they feel like it, right?
Yeah.
They could just show up, take it, and leave. Like, unless you're growing some real banger bud, there's no real reason for the monster to be there. But maybe I don't know.
There's no reason for the monster to be in this world.
No.
I don't know what that is.
But a 15-acre patch of woods in the middle of Maine, and this thing just shows up.
Yeah.
I would do some looking around and see if there's any other stories or folklore in that area and try to find out maybe what has happened. But these pale crawlers make no sense to me, because are they the rake? Are they separate from the rake? Like we find stories.
I think they're separate.
But they do look a lot alike. What was the one that we had where the fella had sent us the story outside of the military base, remember?
Yeah. And they were watching it through like thermal lenses.
Watching it, yes, and watching it move and how it acted and this whole thing. It's like, dude, we don't know what that was.
And it was even screeching, I think.
Yes.
Really high-pitched.
And big, like tall and lanky. Ugh. Those are some of the, look, I'm still down with, I see Bigfoot. I don't want to see something like this.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because it's one thing when you think about Bigfoot, right? Like it would shake you up to go, oh God, I saw Bigfoot. It's a whole nother thing to see something which has the essence of evil to it. Bigfoot never does feel evil to me.
No, me either.
Right? It just doesn't. Dogman does. Bigfoot doesn't. I don't know why it is. Maybe it's because we're just conditioned to hate werewolves, right? Like we've always talked about.
Well, I think conditioning is a big part of it, because even when you watch the videos on YouTube or somewhere of a possible Sasquatch, I've caught myself sometimes going, oh, yeah, that's not Sasquatch. Oh, yeah, that is. I mean, like as if I know. It's because I've been conditioned to know what I think a Bigfoot should look like.
Yes.
When in reality, I have no clue what it looks like. So to argue that that's real and this one isn't.
And how it moves.
It's foolish, but you think about it later by yourself. You're like, oh, yeah, I really am kind of an idiot because I'm arguing about something that I've never seen. How can you argue what something doesn't look right when you've never seen one? Like,
I want you to ask my wife.
That's not what a bottle of soda pop looks like. Have you ever seen one? Oh, no. Well, how do you know? Right? But you catch yourself doing that.
Yeah.
I catch myself doing that all the time. I'm like, no.
At least you're smart enough to realize that you're doing it. Catch yourself like, I got to stop doing this.
Often I realize it after the fact, but I've gotten better when I start looking at something. I'm like, okay, let's try to keep an open mind. Like, wow, that does look weird. Or, oh, that looks definitely like a dude in an outfit. Oh, that one doesn't. Boy, that's unexplainable. You know, like you run the whole game.
I will say this, and I don't know if it's this way for you, but it has been for me. The longer we do the show, all these years of doing it, it becomes, you would think you would be more open-minded, but you got to catch yourself from being less open-minded. Because you're like, no, it can't be this, it can't be that. You've got to make sure, and I have to remind myself the same way when you read these stories and you see these things that you're like, I've got to keep myself in the mind frame of who sent me the story, of what happened when they saw it, what was going on then. Because it's real easy to read a story or watch a video, like they always say. It always sticks in my mind. In somebody's story, you're the villain.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that way. Everybody listening to somebody's story, you're the villain in somebody's story. It's just the way it works. So there's always two sides to it. So I always have to look at that and be like, there's got to be something in between.
Yeah, that's my problem with Bigfoot is like when you watch a video, other people say, well, that's definitely not Bigfoot because it looks too much like a man. Mm-hmm. But then you hear the stories of so many people that are out hunting or something and they didn't shoot because it looked like a man. Well, maybe Bigfoot looks just like a man. So does that make sense? Some people are saying that can't be a Bigfoot because it looks like a man. But I'm saying maybe it does look like a man.
That's what he looks like.
So all the videos you see where it definitely doesn't look like a person, those are fake. And the ones that look like people are real. Maybe or is it vice versa? You don't know. You'll drive yourself crazy.
Man, I hate that you even said that. And I'm going to be thinking about that the rest of the day. Right? Mm-hmm. I've got something else for you, too, as long as we're on the Bigfoot and something's creepy. I need to share this with you. It says, I grew up in the small foothills of eastern Kentucky. It's a place called Bailey's Creek in Harlan County, where folklore and stories of haunts and mountain monsters run rampant. Harlan County, now that's got a lot of miners, I believe, all through Harlan County. Who was it? There's, you know him, Aaron Watson, the Texas country music artist, sings a song about Harlan County.
Does he really?
Yeah, he does. That's where I remember a lot of this talking about it. I looked into it. But
Chris Knight, he's from Kentucky. I really like Chris Knight.
He's got some bangers too, don't he? Mm-hmm. It says, everyone has a cousin or an uncle that saw Bigfoot while out hunting, or an aunt that swears she saw a ghost in an old high school at one time. So it's hard to discern what's truth and what's fiction. Most of what I've personally seen or heard while out in the mountains, I usually attribute to local wildlife. Have I seen anything that's unexplainable to my logical mind? Oh, not yet. But I'm also not arrogant enough to think that these things don't exist. Hell, I saw someone on the subreddit earlier that said it perfectly. 90% of the stories are fiction, but it's the 10% that keep you coming back. And by logic, we have to assume that 10% of all the stories we hear or see are true, and that those people witnessed something amazing and terrifying. So in my small town, Dog Man is a known perpetrator of many unfortunate happenings. I've heard stories of it killing chickens, trying to bust down doors, attacking hikers, or just being a nuisance on someone's farm or property. I've also heard stories of it stalking those that live deep in the woods, coming to stare into their windows at night, and even protecting them from strangers that made their way onto their land at some point. The majority of these people like to tell booger stories, as we say. They like having a grand story to tell people for attention or just the pleasure of telling it. I'm not sure which, but a few are trustworthy, and they are usually the ones that will only tell their tale if asked. My grandfather was one of them. Yeah, I know, I sound biased because it's my grandfather, but I have 6 uncles and an aunt that literally could make a living out of all the lies they tell about local cryptids, and I'm more than happy to call them liars. My grandfather, though, was a very logical man. He was a skeptic in everything cryptid, as well as spirits and ghosts. always looking for the logical explanation, and usually upsetting the storyteller as well by questioning everything. That's why I tend to believe him, because he never tried to lie to me and his other grandkids. If anything, he was always the voice of reason we ran to when we were scared. But once, when I was younger, I asked him if he had ever seen anything before, be it ghost or monster. I had been hearing stories from my uncles all day about Bigfoot, haunts, all these things, and I wanted to know his thoughts on it. So we sat there for a minute, not even acknowledging my question. And when I was about to ask again, in case he hadn't heard me, he spoke. When he and my grandmother had first bought our family homestead, they had heard fantastical stories about monsters that roamed the part of the mountains and how evil they were. My grandmother was a little scared, but my grandfather said he just shook his head and went on. He figured it was a few black bears that people had been hearing and seeing, or even some bobcats, and that he wasn't too worried about it. About 2 months into them living there, sure enough, he had seen a mama bear and some cubs making their way up the mountain behind his house, so he didn't think too much when he heard something pounding on his front door one night, scratching at it, trying to get in. He told me that he grabbed his shotgun before going to the door. He tried looking out the front windows to see if he could catch a glimpse of whatever or whoever was there, but he could only see a large black shadow being cast on the porch. Being the fearless soul that he was, he unlocked the door and swung it open, expecting a bear or even a person to be standing there. But it was neither. What he saw that night still had him shook up when he told me this story, and it was some odd 50 years ago. He said that as the door swung open, he saw an extremely large humanoid standing there. It stood a good 6.5 foot tall, and it was slightly hunched over as it stood on the covered porch. Its arms were long, the hands reaching well past its bent knees, which were bending in the opposite direction of humans. He said that it was covered in thick black hair, very dense and dark, and that it had a smell to it like the mix of wet dog and raw sewage. Lastly, the face, or rather the head, was what brought him up short. He said it looked like a German shepherd's head and had been placed on this large, hairy, human-shaped body, and that as he looked at it, it cocked its head sideways and looked back down at him, its eyes showing fear and confusion. He told me that he pulled up his gun, and before his finger could hit the trigger, it took off, but not before he got off a warning shot right into its right calf muscle. He said the howl that came out of it when he shot it scared him more than anything in his life had, and he ran back inside, bolting the door closed. He stood there, listening as its cries and howls began to fade as it ran deeper into the mountains, until he couldn't hear it anymore before he moved away from the door and went back to bed. And he swore to me on all the things he holds dear that this thing would still show up sometimes, dragging its wounded leg across his porch as it came up to the door, but it never bothered anything again. He said it would come to the door, sniff around it before growling softly, and then taking off again. He told me that there are a lot of things in the woods that can hurt you, be it beast or plant, and a lot more that can scare you. But the thing he saw that night was the scariest of them all, and that I'd best never go looking for it because I would woefully regret it if I came across it. My grandfather's been gone for about 15 years now, and I still believe every word he told me that day. Does that prove the existence of such a creature? Maybe not. And the words of an old war vet won't be enough to change the minds of some people. But to me, it's the realest story I've ever heard about the creature. And I hope that someday someone can get some actual documented proof, if only to prove what my grandfather went through and what he saw that night. SP. And we are back.
Yes.
So some crazy Dogman story.
Crazy sightings. So from all over that run the full gamut, from Dogman to Pale Crawlers to Flannel Men.
Well, I've got to wrap it up with this. I'm going to drop on the
ones.
outro.
Okay.
You have to listen. This is for you, Brud. It's a Glimmer Man sighting.
Oh, are you kidding? The Glimmer Man. I love these.
This is my husband's account of a Glimmer Man sighting that I'm retelling. Just had him repeat it to me again to make sure I didn't mess up this story somehow. He grew up in Vermont, so it's a very wooded everywhere. Vermont feels like a benign place as far as absolutely everything goes. But still, where there's a lot of woods, there's strangeness, I firmly believe. The woods is not a human domain. It belongs to the animals and God knows what else. So about 30 years ago, when he was in high school, he and his buddies were hanging out at a friend's house. The edge of the forest was probably 5 or 6 car lengths away from the porch where they were hanging out. He's never smoked or drank or did anything mind-altering due to a medical condition. So there he was, of completely sound mind, just randomly looking at the forest edge when he sees a tall, humanoid, invisible-ish figure just strolling along the edge of the forest just inside the tree line. He watched it slowly walk the length of the property and then out of sight. He said he would have never noticed it if he hadn't been looking directly at the spot where it appeared initially. And that was it. It was so bizarre he didn't tell his friends and he just played it off like nothing happened. The only description he could give besides the weird predator-type invisibility aspect was that it was definitely humanoid in shape, sort of slowly, slightly swinging its arms, and definitely tall. So crazy. Also, just FYI, my husband is a no-nonsense, practical, down-to-earth sort of man with a lot of integrity. So not the type to make things up like this at all. He's an open person, though, through and through, and has seen a number of strange things in the wood over his time in Vermont.
Wow.
So there you go.
Again, all these sightings, there's something very similar.
Well, what I enjoyed even about that is 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's cloaked.
So we're getting more and more of these stories when the Glimmer Man comes in that have been back in the past.
I know. That's one of my favorite things. I recently had one sent to me that was even back from like the 1940s, I think.
Wow.
Where some guy whose great-grandfather or something like that had told him a story or something like that, but they didn't know what to call it.
Yeah.
So I think whatever this is, it seems like it's been visiting here for a while. I know that people, every time we do a story like this, they send me all these articles and links to this top secret clothing the military has.
Do you think it could be Bigfoot?
It could be.
You know what I'm saying?
I think it's not. It's more likely to be that than a person in a military suit, because I don't know why people in the military would be like you said earlier, like trying to prank deer hunters and things like that. You're going to get shot.
There's no
and then
reason.
someone's going to have your technology, so it just doesn't make sense.
Well, yeah, then it gets out into the public.
I mean, when they develop a new stealth fighter or something, that's why they test it out at Groom Lake, right? So there's no eyes on it. They're not just flying it around Six Flags,
waving it at everybody. Yeah,
I mean, like a lot of the footage that we've seen that's been released by the Pentagon and things like that of these UAPs. Mm-hmm. I've had more time to think about it now, and maybe that is just some top secret aircraft that we have. Because why would the Pentagon admit that there's UFOs? Like, to me, it's those videos came out and they're like, crap, we got to make up something. So let's pretend that they're UFOs. It'll get people from thinking that, no, that's really just top secret drones.
So you think all of them are
No,
military?
not all of them. Of course, not all of them.
Because I think that stuff in the ocean is
I don't know how
mind blowing. Yeah, I don't even know what's going on. I think there's a whole lot of gears and a lot of other things turning in it at play. That's not one simple explanation. Yes. And I think that's why they said yes. I think that's why the government said, yeah, we know they're there, because they know they're there, but now they can openly hide stuff right in front of you.
Right. I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
The spread of misinformation helps them out more.
Oh, yeah, right? For sure. Man, right. Oh, man. Like I said, thank y'all so much.
Yeah.
Y'all have been just overloading us with crazy tales and crazy stories.
Keep it up.
Oh, man.
We want your stories.
Just be careful. I don't mind you sharing them. Be careful when you have the encounters.
Yeah.
I've got a cool one coming up for the Elite Show of some stuff going on. And then I've got a story I'm going to share with you next week about, I don't know if you nail it down as a time slip or an abduction, or I don't know. This happened to a guy, so I'm gonna share.
I love time slips. Those are some of my favorite. If you have stories you want to share with me and Kim and the listeners, don't hesitate. Email the show expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. You can call the show 888-393-2783. Let's not forget about our sponsors. Trade is offering new subscribers a total of $30 off your first order plus free shipping when you go to drinktrade.com/expended, and also get $30 off your next first order, not your next, your first order available nationwide. Just go to microdose.com and be sure to use the promo code expanded, EXPANDED. I hope everybody out there has a good week. Till next time, I'm Kyle. He's Kip. Yep.
Don't forget, if you want to listen to some more stuff that I've got to say, you just want to listen to me flap my lips, check out my buddy Adam's podcast. It's called Off Grid Perspective Podcast. And I believe it came out almost a week ago, the one that I did. So if you want to check it out, jump over there. You'll hear us BSing, and you'll get to get the drop on the story that I'm going to have to get Adam to come on and tell.
Awesome. That's it, folks. Till next time, I'm Kyle. He's Kim.
Peace, y'all.
At Frost Bank, we believe young people are fearless. Look at the two biggest tech companies, both created by people under 25. Or when the world's biggest band flew over from England, they were all under 25. Our youngest customers are capable of amazing achievements, but they're still figuring out who they are. So we help by waiving the monthly service charge on certain accounts for account holders under age 25. It's about supporting the next generation. It's about more than money. Frost Bank.
O'Reilly. Need new wiper blades? Not sure which ones to buy? The professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts can help. We'll show you options for your specific car and even install them for free. Right now, save $10 per pair on Bosch Focus wiper blades, plus earn double O-Rewards points. There's no better time to replace your wiper blades. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts today. O'Reilly Auto Parts.